9th to 17th of April 2026. I'm writing this, imagining us gathering for peace and the meaning of our action. Today is the second day of a precarious ceasefire between Iran and US and Israel. I feel I can breathe again, and in that I recognize the anxiety, the pressure, the fear and the pain of these days. All the things that one pushes down in order to encounter the horror of destruction and the suffering that is irreversible, already happened, already lost. The reality of not knowing which of your family and friends will still be alive tomorrow, and what will survive of houses, of cities, of over 7,000 years of civilization under the ideology of destruction. And how strange is the displacement of looking from outside Iran when it is burning. There is no suffering like war, no terror like war, no lack of freedom like war, as it is life itself that perishes and the body that is invaded. When the last invasion against Iran happened in June 2025, I felt guilty for not knowing enough of the pain of the people in Palestine, Sudan, Ukraine, and elsewhere at war, for not knowing enough the pain of people suffering from the many wars that have happened since the year I was born in 1986, when the Iran-Iraq war was ongoing, a war that killed my grandfather. What a misplaced response guilt can be. There are certain meanings that cannot be grasped without experience, yet they are approachable through active empathy, solidarity, and consciousness. And perhaps this is a fragment of peace. So I breathe in this possibility of peace, which opens these words, the very faith in articulation of peace as an act that calls upon its presence. What peace entails in our political moment? What is the imagination of peace and how it connects to hope, justice, and freedom? The question of peace is necessarily both social and political. This is not to undermine or take away the personal peace and the metaphysics of life, but to recognize that peace is a social reality and as such depends upon the conditions that makes it possible. A peace resulting from war cannot give rise to freedom. This imposed peace means that diverse political forces are silenced instead of coexisting, which is the essence of social life. It means killings of civilians, exploitation, destruction of civil infrastructure and life, suffering, and perpetuation of violence. The peace known to the governments of Israel and US is of this kind. It is a shameful abuse of the word. We need to understand our situation in the context of history, to look at both material and immaterial ruins, to look at where we stand in relation to hope and peace, and what we have achieved and learned in time in pursuing our struggle for peace and freedom. It is our connections with each other, with our own bodies, and with the land that enables peace. We have achieved a disclosure of truth that can no longer be denied through the abuse of the history of Jewish suffering. The presence of millions in the streets across the world testifies to this. Europe and the US have become politicized after long years. People are reclaiming the meaning of politics as something that should bring peace, security, equality, and prosperity, regardless of class, gender, belief, and race, as something that should serve them and their coexistence with one another in mutual freedom. So now, changes of government and unequal social realities are no longer the imagination of a minority, but a real political possibility. We have learned that all components of social equality are connected. So should be our struggles for enabling them. The struggle for freedom of sexuality is not separated from women's liberation. The fight for freedom of Palestine is not separated from the resistance against domination of finance capital in Jersey. We have learned that we are connected and need to organize our connections locally and internationally. We have learned collectively as people of the world. Yet, what different people have paid and gone through for such political awareness is profoundly unequal. This makes it more urgent to concentrate our actions, not in ways that serve our feelings of being useful or our political desires, but in ways that respond to what is needed collectively. I have learned recently that the most difficult act is to separate my own political desires from what those desires means for someone living under bombs, and to prioritize the latter. There is a tendency which views the war resulting from the invasion of Iran by Israel and US as the only remaining possibility of resistance against the genocide in Palestine. There are many who share this view, both among Iranians and people of other different countries. In this view, war is accepted as inevitable due to the fascism of Zionism and its allies, and then justified because of this inevitability and the need for resistance. The war is not supported, but accepted, and then idealized as that which can bring end to catastrophe, as the war for peace. I understand and at times find myself inclined towards this, as my desire for change and resistance, as my human instinct of not being able to any longer bear witness to the killings of innocent people and children, decapitation, hunger, rape, imprisonment, and obliteration of entire worlds, urge for an immediate end to this catastrophe caused by Israel, supported by US, and enabled by the complicity of many governments. Catastrophe cannot sufficiently express what this is. The reality of suffering in Palestine, and now southern Lebanon and Iran, is unspeakable. And it will remain unspeakable in history, in the same way that Auschwitz has. It entails not only the end of human lives and the world that the name Palestine holds, but the severe defeat of humanity, one that not only affects now, but deprives us of peace in the future. Nevertheless, I want to argue that this is a false hope, one that obstructs the real hope for peace. I want to speak of a kind of peace that avoids war, one that is interwoven with hope and freedom, and pursued through long-term action, organization, the building of alliances, and endurance. I want to dwell on the problems of this position, not because I have lost sight of the fact that the main cause of war is the occupation and invasion by Israel and the US, but because I believe that the political agency aligned with this view can bring about transformation if it navigates the situation differently. As long as the aggression and the invasion are ongoing, there is no possibility of peace without resistance and what is more precisely called self-defense. But the question for all of us, outside the sites of conflict, is how to support this resistance with an outlook for peace. Our responses should be within our political remits and possibilities and carried out by our own labor. More importantly, for the sake of peace, if Iran carries out the resistance against Israel, the conditions which have created the state of Israel and the rise of fascism will not end. If the roots and conditions of this historical problem are not the target of change, they will perpetuate, as they have, regardless of the different ideologies that present themselves at the surface. Fascism should be understood in relation to domination of finance capital, and racism should be understood in relation to exploitation. History shows us that war is always directed toward the interest of those in power, especially within ideologies that rely on war and destruction for survival. It shows us that crises are not only a means of distraction, but a core function of capitalism. Crisis compresses time into no time. It makes endurance and long-term struggle seem impossible. It silences hope, as hope is the ability to see other possibilities. It expands time and enables the imagination of peace, as that which cannot be killed, as that which we pass to the future generations as our connection to peace. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Aras.